Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a world where warmth and connection flow abundantly. Join us as we embark on a journey of healing and discovery, brought to you live from the prestigious Western Spring Television studios. Prepare to be embraced by a wave of positive energy and insightful discussions. Thank you for tuning in and being a part of our community. I am Temitope Ajijola. Our Spring Clinic will delve into everything health and well-being so we can help you not only to feel better, but also bring you information that will help you reduce the risk of diseases, lengthen your lifespan, save you money, and benefit the environment. For some time now, we have been discussing basic anatomy, examining the human body organs and systems via the respiratory system, the digestive system, the circulatory system, the excretory system, the nervous system, the reproductive system. We've had the honor of our own medic, seasoned family physician with over a decade's worth of experience under his sleeve, Dr. Ayodeji Ogunbemi, taking us step-by-step through sessions on the respiratory and digestive systems. Thank you for your commitment to the health and well-being of all, Dr. Sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're expectant of all we're going to, glean from you on the broadcast. We gave our word that the circulatory system will be our next focus, and we're making good that promise today. If you do not take notes now, I will assume it is because you know that you can revisit the broadcast on Western Spring Television's YouTube channel and our other social media platforms. The circulatory system and organ. Over to you, Dr.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I must sincerely appreciate the management and the crew. I had the privilege of seeing so much that goes on.
Well, they appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Well, so I should go on.
Yes.
Okay.
Have the floor.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. The circulatory system. How should I start now? We can also call it the cardiovascular system. So circulatory means that something is going in circles, circulatory. Then cardiovascular, which is more anatomical. That is cardio, the heart. Then vascular, the vessels. So for people that are listening, to be able to understand, so when you say cardio, anything, anywhere you read it or you hear it, cardio means heart, then vascular. So I'll try within the little time, because this is an area that people will specialize in. And any specialist in cardiovascular system will be called the cardiologist. So I doff my hat to all cardiologists watching. Okay, let's go on. So the cardiovascular system or the circulatory system is a very intricate part. It apparently looks like the central part to all systems. Well, maybe I shouldn't put it like that, but without it, without any system, you won't have the whole body. But the cardiovascular system is such a unique one, intricately meshed together with other systems. So let me just break it down so that our viewers will understand very well. I've tried to divide it into 3 or 4 parts. The first part is that, let me list the components. We have the heart, we have the vessels, and the vessels could be, we have the artery and the veins, then we have the capillaries. Now it looks like this, it's just like a complete circuit. We have the heart in the middle, we have the artery taking the blood away from the heart to other parts of the body, then we have the veins taking the blood back to the heart from other parts of the body, then the capillaries appear to be like the intermediary between the arteries and the veins. So the heart is the pumping part. That's why when you feel the left side of your chest, you would, we call it, you palpate, you will feel the beat, your heartbeat. So it's a muscular organ. It keeps pumping, and it's a very strong organ. Very, very strong. So then through the arteries, we have the large arteries, the aorta, from the aorta, the big arteries, which are usually described as the elastic arteries. You would wonder why.
Yeah.
We call it elastic arteries because once the heart pumps blood, they must be able to receive it. And so they will expand to accommodate the blood coming from the heart, because the heart is pumping it with a whole lot of force. And then they accommodate it, they kind of reduce the tempo in which it's coming, then transmit it to smaller arteries, which are usually described as muscular arteries. Then from there, they now get to the arterioles. The arterioles are just very tiny, tiny arteries. Then from the arterioles, it gets to the capillaries. Then from the capillaries, from the artery side, then it gets to the capillaries on the venous side, that is vein side. Then it climbs up like that. Then through the inferior and superior vena cava, they enter the right side of the heart. So that's a way in which I can break it down. The second way I can break it down is to make us understand that there's an intricate meshing between the circulatory system, that is cardiovascular system, and the pulmonary system, which we discussed the last time. Because the respiratory system helps us to bring in the air, that is the oxygen. And one of the major goals of the circulatory system is to carry that oxygen gotten from the lungs, the respiratory system, to other parts of the body. Because other parts of the body need the oxygen. So how does this happen? I'm trying to break it down for you to get it. Okay, you may have to follow me stepwisely. Now, the heart, the human heart, has two sides. It has 4 chambers, but 2 sides. So it has 2 aortas, two atrium, and then 2 ventricles.
2 sides, could we say left and right?
Yes. So yes, we have the left side and we have the right side. So on the left side, okay, this is my left. On the left side, we have the left atrium, left ventricle. On the right side, we have the right atrium, the right ventricle. And you must understand, or people must know now, that the left side is the stronger side. I'll explain. The right side, the atrium from both sides, receives blood into the heart. So the right side will get oxygenated blood from the lungs. That is, the blood that passes through the lungs that have now gotten oxygen from the respiratory system and excreted or exchanged it for CO2. CO2 as the respiratory system has taken the carbon dioxide away and given the blood oxygen. That is the blood that leaves the lungs through the pulmonary vein, leaves the lungs and enters the left ventricle. So let me say something like a low pressure is it, because the blood is just flowing into the left atrium. From the left atrium, the heart pushes the blood into the left ventricle. And then from the left ventricle, which is a very thick side, a stronger side than the right side, it forces blood, that it pushes blood from that side to other parts of the body. So the force there will be stronger than the left, which is only taking blood to the lungs.
And the right.
Okay, than the right. You seem to have got it. So the left side is more muscular, is thicker, is stronger than the right, because the right only receives blood. The blood the right receives is from the veins, and it's not under pressure. The veins are not really under pressure. The arteries are under pressure. The arteries are the muscular ones. So the left side has to push blood, and the blood must go around. So by the time the blood is returning, obviously the pressure is no more there. So they are just flowing as you are walking, as you are exercising. It's aiding the venous return. Then the blood just returns into the right atrium from the inferior vena cava and superior vena cava. Superior vena cava, it drains blood from the brain, from the head, and then the 2 arms. The inferior vena cava from the lower limbs, that is the 2 legs, abdomen, and all the likes. So it gets into the right atrium. From the right atrium, gets into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, the blood getting to the right ventricle is deoxygenated. That is, the blood getting away from the left is oxygenated. Don't forget I said from the lungs. They've gotten oxygen from the lungs. So it gets to the left side. The left side pushes oxygenated blood. That's why if you look at different anatomical descriptions, they'll put it like red, like bright red. That is, oxygen is more. However, well, I'll come back to that. So by the time it's getting back to the right side, different cells, different organs have gotten the oxygen. We've gotten the oxygen. So we have deoxygenated blood getting to the right side. So the right ventricle pushes the deoxygenated back to the respiratory system, right to the lungs, so that the CO2, which is now bringing, collected, it gave oxygen, it received CO2. The CO2 now gets to the lungs, releases the CO2 to the lungs, then we breathe it out, then collects the oxygen, and then that comes back to the left side of the heart. So we can see that it's like a husband and a wife. The cardiovascular system or the circulatory system cannot exist without the respiratory system. They are just together. So that's analysis. So we call it, we can divide this into, they say, pulmonary circulation and then systemic circulation. Pulmonary circulation, that is, the circulation that goes to the lungs. If you look at it, it looks like a loop. And then there's another big loop below. So the other one that feeds the entire body is the systemic circulation. So that's another description. I think with that, I've already talked about the two sides of the heart. Then maybe I now talk about the functions of the heart. I was going to say earlier that by anatomical descriptions in many texts, you find the left side or the oxygenated side being so bright red. That's where it's painted. The artery is always painted red. Then the veins are usually painted blue. Then the layman would think the vessels and the blood, maybe the oxygenated blood will be blue and then the oxygenated blood will be red. Really, blood is always red. It's always red. However, once oxygen is taken away from the blood, it gives a bluish hue to it. So it looks a little bit darker, because during surgeries, there are ways to identify the artery from the vein. I mentioned one earlier. The arteries are almost always under pressure because from the left side of the heart, it's pumping seriously, you know. It's pumping with full force. So you almost always find the artery pulsating. Tum, 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 tum. You know, you almost always find the veins not pulsating, except the vein is lying over an artery. So it will just be moving at the pace of the artery. So you can identify that. Then the coloration. Oxygenated blood is usually bright red. Deoxygenated blood is usually like dark red. If you are checking it, maybe through a fair complexion person, may appear like blue. But it's not blue. It's just because the color has been filtered through the complexion of the skin, really. So it's more like dark red, bright red. You know, sometimes we ask people, if somebody says that he's pooing blood, we usually will ask, what's the color? Because the color will give us a description of where, and maybe it's an artery or a vein, and then maybe it's upper GI or lower GI. That's a big matter on its own. Then let's move on. So the artery. I've mentioned that we have different types of arteries. Then it goes on to the capillaries, from the capillaries to the veins to the heart. So if there's any problem along this number of vessels, and I need to let you know at this point that the heart is a very fantastic muscular organ. Do you know that at rest, the heart pumps about 5 to 6 liters of blood per minute, not per hour?
5 to 6
liters.
And this is inside our body?
Yes. Per minute, not per hour. And for an athlete, it can pump up to like 30 to 35 liters per minute.
From 5 to 6, then 30 to 35.
Yeah, because the more you, now this is it. As we are seated here, I'm calm, you are relaxed. The basic metabolism going on in our body is at a lower state. If you are sleeping, it's lower. My muscles are not really moving except for my hands. So the consumption of oxygen, the demand for oxygen,
It's low.
it's lower. But if I'm exercising myself, the cells in my body are demanding more because oxygen is the source of, is the main thing. You get it? Is the fuel, is the gasoline, is the petrol, is what does it call it?
Human body.
Yes, of the human body. So the more I exercise, the more my cells start to demand oxygen. And then the heart has to supply the oxygen at the same rate. Else, this is where the issue comes in. Else, once there's no enough oxygen, the cells of the body try to get fuel from other things. Just like this is an international TV, but let's come to Nigeria. Let's come to Southwest. If there's petrol scarcity, people start to burn wood. Abi? They go to coal, which has smoke. Abi? And chokes people. Am I correct? So when you don't have enough oxygen in the body, the cells change from the oxygen. They try to look for other ways of getting energy. So they now have to go through fat metabolism and all the likes. And then that produces lactic acid. It's an acid, which causes pain in that part of the body. So when people exercise to a point, one of the reasons why they will get to that signifies their limit is that they start to feel pain in their muscles. That place is aching me. It's because the supply of oxygen to that place is not being met. So there's another means in which the muscles are now getting the energy that is now producing lactic acid. So let me not bore you with that because
it's interesting.
It's interesting. So that's that. Now, circulatory system does not only function around oxygen. I must say that at this point. Number one, oxygen has to supply oxygen to other parts of the body, and this is important when it gets to the brain because the brain cannot do without oxygen for more than 4 to 5 minutes. You must understand that. That's why people that have stroke, intervention must be almost as fast as possible, within minutes. If oxygen is not getting to the nerves, particularly to the brain, 4 to 5 minutes, the nerves will just start to pack up. That's one. Then two, so the brain is also intricately dependent on the cardiovascular system. Number two is our kidneys. Do you know that the kidneys receive about 20% of the cardiac output? That is, whatever amount of blood comes out from the heart, 20% goes to our kidneys. So you can start to see that the kidneys, the functions of the kidney, by the time we get to excretory system, we talk about kidney and everything, is also intricately dependent on the circulatory system. So the excretory system, in which the kidney is part of, is also dependent on the circulatory system. The nervous system, which the brain is the coordinating organ, is dependent on the cardiovascular system.
Yes, sir.
Can I progress?
Please do.
Now, when we eat, because I've talked about oxygen now, I've talked about CO2. Oxygen, circulatory system helps us to distribute the oxygen across the cells in the body, then collect CO2, carbon dioxide from all the cells and get to the lungs. So those two appear to be prominent, but that's not the only thing that the cardiovascular system does. Cardiovascular system also helps to supply all the cells with appropriate nutrients. So that gets us to the digestive system. That's why I said the circulatory system appears to be like the central system in which other systems are dependent upon. So if you eat, the only way the food, aside the digestion, the assimilation, the absorption, it is the blood that will carry the nutrients from your GIT, that is gastrointestinal system, to other parts of the body. Because when I eat now, it goes through my stomach, intestine, out. So what is needed in the food is absorbed by the blood and then distributed across other cells. Number next, so that's third point, that is distribution of nutrients. Number next is hormones. It helps to transport hormones. Hormones are chemicals released from different parts of the body that have other functions in other parts of the body. So there's no other way for these hormones to be transported to other parts of the body except that through the circulatory system. So the organs producing the hormones will release the hormones into the circulatory system, and then the circulatory system will now transport it to the organ in which it is needed. So those are 4 basic functions. Number next about the functions of the cardiovascular system is that all these I've described is like in a loop, Abi, like heart, vessels, back to heart, vessel, back to heart. If there's any leakage, now I use the word leakage so that we can understand. An average human being, an average adult should have like 5 liters of blood, 5 to 5.5 liters of blood. If there's any leakage, which occurs when we're in trauma, we call it hemorrhage, that blood is now coming out. If that leakage is not stopped on time, the person dies. We all know that. Somebody is bleeding. That's why anytime, either internally or externally, that's why anytime anybody is bleeding, people shout, let's help him. Because we know that as long as the blood is coming out, the blood will not be sufficient to go round. Abi? So the blood in itself, which is a component of the circulatory system or cardiovascular system, helps in clotting. Clotting is a process where, how should I describe it? Where we seal off the leakage, where the system itself seals off leakages, because you can also seal off leakages from outside. You know, we can say compress, you can surgically stop it, you can apply things to stop it. But the way, that's why if there's a cut, you notice that after a while, you have clot formation to stop the leakages. If not, to every cut we have, that's potential death. And I need to say this to potentiate the issue of leakages, that is hemorrhage. If, you know, that maybe you need to observe that whenever somebody is bleeding, after a short time, he starts to feel dizzy. It's okay, I can't, because blood supply to the brain is reducing, blood supply to other organs is reducing, and then the person starts to lose grasp of reality, and the person falls to the ground. And that's why we say, do you want to round up now? Or?
We won't round up. We'll just, hold it there for a while. We need to go on this very quick breather, and then when we get back, we'll continue from that part about, oxygen supply in the body getting less, or when you're bleeding. This quick breather, and we'll be back.
Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1909, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history.
Up to 75% of human infectious diseases originates in animals. And as more bushmeat is brought into our cities, the risk of human infectious disease outbreaks increases. Ebola, monkeypox, Lassa fever, yellow fever, and even COVID-19 may have been transmitted in this way. Illegal bushmeat trade not only endangers our wildlife, but affects our health and may damage our economy. So please, say no to illegal bushmeat. Keep them wild and keep us safe.
Gbadamosi Adegoke Adelabu was a prominent figure in Ibadan politics and Western region before Nigeria's independence. He was a key founder of the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, a political party that held lofty the torch of liberty for the two West African countries. He carved a niche for himself as a wordsmith and a creative speaker. The nickname Benkelemens was a natively corrupted version of Peculiar Mess, his bombastic English language style often used to score proceedings at the parliament. The author of Africa in Evolution, a handbook of freedom for Nigerian nationalists, was Nigeria's Federal Minister of Natural Resources and Social Services between 1955 and 1956. He died in an auto crash on the 25th March 1958 at the age of 42. Western Spring Television identifies Adegoke Adelabu as a watershed character in history.
Well, thank you very much for keeping faith with us on Spring Clinic on Western Spring Television. And today we're talking about the circulatory system, otherwise known as the cardiovascular system. Well, today I've learned a lot. I've learned that my heart has two sides, the left and the right. And before we went on that break, we were talking about the fact that, when you're bleeding, you could, the body begins to, sometimes the body seals the blood from inside or from outside. That's with help though. Doctor, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much.
But I did the job well. The lecture.
Yes, the summary was good enough.
Thank you.
Okay, we were talking about the sealing.
Yes.
That is when there's a leakage. I'm deliberately using those terminologies for everybody to be able to get it. So, but we'll likely, in medical terms, we say hemorrhage. That is bleeding. The person is bleeding. So, and I mentioned before we went on break that because the circulatory system or the cardiovascular system is central to other systems, when it gets to the brain, whenever there is bleeding, there will be insufficiency in the amount of blood that goes around. So the oxygen will drop. So the brain will not be able to take it very well. So the person has to feel dizzy, then later may lose balance, and then people say he fainted or passed out. Yes, it's correct, because the brain that seems to coordinate nervous activities will not have enough energy, source of energy, which is oxygen, to work. So it starts to shut down. So what happens? Because let me just deviate a little. When somebody has a form of bleeding, the first thing is that ultimately you must get the person to the hospital as fast as possible, because you really cannot see how bad it will be. However, on your way to the hospital, there are things to do, because we've seen quite a lot at the hospital. There are some practices that are wrong, though they have a good intent, but they are wrong. Number one is that at the site or at the scene, the person fainted, fell to the ground, or was feeling dizzy, and says, okay, I want to lie down, And if you ask them, they'll tell you that upon lying down, they felt better if they had not fainted outrightly. Why? Because when standing up, it requires some measure of pressure to get blood to the brain, because this is the upper part. So it's like pushing blood against gravity to get to the brain. So if the person lies down, the effect of gravity is reduced. So whatever amount of blood remains, it gets to the brain. So in fact, there are some procedures in medical practice that will tell the person to have the head down. You get it? That is to allow blood to get to
the lower part of your body more elevated.
Yes, elevated, because those are the limbs. And other parts, every part is important, but when it gets to the brain, cannot tolerate not having oxygen for like 5 minutes. The limbs can tolerate up to an hour. You get it? So don't try to lift up the head of the person. No, people do it. Okay, he has fainted. They now ask the person to sit down. They are opening the mouth. They are doing no. They are causing more damage. Just allow the person to lie on the left side. We mentioned it at one time, some time ago, on the left side, so that the blood, the little blood that is there can get to the brain. That's one. Number two is that people do a lot about tying. Maybe the hand is bleeding, or the arm, or the lower limb. Maybe people tie it. Tie it with clothes. Tie it with whatever, with belts. Yes, it's not bad in itself, but the moment you tie, you must start to count. You must have to time it, because there's a maximum number of minutes in which, if blood does not get to a part, particularly the upper limb and lower limb, that place is dead. You know, so sometimes people have good intent but bad practice. So the person gets to the hospital and is like, when did you tie this? By the time they mention the time, tell them, you can't untie it, we have to amputate the limb. Because, okay, that's another big thing on its own. Okay, hope I've not changed your mood, I'm sorry.
There was this time, before you continue, Doctor, there was this time, you know, I was stung rather by scorpion. I tied it.
Yes.
Was that wrong? Because the doctor's reaction was...
Yes. Now, let me keep this in. When it concerns health, I think the deeper training is for the doctors. Everybody should be interested in some basic knowledge about, in fact, even CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Everyone should be able to do a CPR, an effective CPR, not just CPR, an effective CPR. It's not that a doctor or a nurse or paramedic are the ones that should do it, because I see cases and people are like, doctor, what are you looking at? This person is dying. A husband should be able to do CPR on the wife. The wife should be able to do CPR on the husband. The husband should be able, the father should be able to do it on the child. We are going to get to cardiac arrest and things like that. You know, because so when it comes to matters like this, people should know. This should be common knowledge that you don't know. Now, if it's a scorpion bite, the native intelligence that people have is that you don't want the venom to move up.
Yes.
Is that not? To get to the heart or to circulate. So, well, in some instances, maybe snake bite, it may apply. Well, a scorpion does not, a scorpion gets to the muzzle. That's why the pain of a scorpion is localized. If you indeed saw the scorpion, the pain is at the site of the sting. And it's so excruciating. You know, that's one of the characters you used to know that it's a scorpion, because the sting, the venom doesn't go around. It's just to the muscles and it causes excruciating pain. In fact, you don't use normal analgesics, you use anesthetic agents to numb that pain. So you really shouldn't have tied it. Now you know.
I know now.
So people shouldn't, well, you can try to tie, but once you tie, in fact, the safe thing I'm going to say here, because medicine, it's so dynamic, and individuals are also dynamic. I can't compare myself with yourself. So if you tie anywhere, though it can still extend more than that, within 20 minutes get to the hospital. And you must let the health personnel know the time in which it was tied, so that we can calculate from that point. Obviously, by the time the person gets to the hospital, we know we have some leverages on some other procedures. Now, if the person is bleeding externally from the limbs, you elevate the limb. You elevate it, because once you elevate it, the force in which blood is going to gush out will be reduced, because gravity will be working for us, for the person to live. You know, then compress. Don't compress your hands except you have gloves. You can get gloves. That's why this thing should be in everybody's vehicle. You should have a first aid, have some things there. So just compress, at least put some pressure. It's a very simple thing. Once you put the pressure, the arteries will be compressed and blood will not be able to, you know, filter away or get out of the system. Now, number next I need to say is that when people have some form of accident and they're admitted in the hospital and they're apparently okay, those that are bleeding, it looks like they're not apparently okay. I mean, it's obvious. So everybody's running up and down. But a trained personnel knows that the person that looks apparently okay may have some form of internal bleed, which we call concealed hemorrhage. That is, the person is bleeding, but it's concealed because it's not external. That, you know, when we tell people you can't go home until after 24 hours, you can't go after 48 hours. People like, I can walk, there's no problem with me. See my doctor, see my no, I can't stay. And just person, after counseling, after educating the person, we implore the person stay. The person is still like, no. Well, hospital is not prison, but I can't discharge you. Then people have to sign discharge against medical advice certificate, and then that shows that you are the one that left. But it is not a good thing, because when people stay and then when they are apparently well, you tell them to do some investigations, and they are like, doctor, there's nothing wrong with me. In fact, it is that person you should help us look after. And we say things like, do an X-ray, do an ultrasound. Can you please lie down? Let us examine your abdomen. It's like, what is the doctor looking for? We are trying to assess, is there a concealed hemorrhage? Because once it is concealed, you need an expert to know. And sometimes investigations are needed. So that we need to stop that bleeding as soon as possible. And there's something about the circulatory system. If it bleeds beyond the point, it becomes irreversible. Becomes irreversible. So before it crosses the irreversible border, that is, whatever you do after that time, the person will still die. You need urgent intervention. So when people are involved in an accident, and when accidents happen, people don't know the mechanism of injury. Sometimes people will not feel it because they have some adrenaline. There's an adrenaline gush whenever there's an accident. The person feels energized. But something may be going on with the spleen. Something may be going on with the liver. And those are the two major culprits with concealed hemorrhage. And the person can bleed to death. So you find such cases, the person says he had an accident yesterday, went home, there was no problem, then by tomorrow, it's gone. So that's on hemorrhage.
You talked about border, the boundary, irreversible, yes. Points. Can we know the pointers?
Well, for the layman on the street, you may not know that. As I tell people, once there's a hemorrhage, get to the hospital on time. Let me quickly chip this in, because maybe this will help the doctors too, and then the patients too. Sometimes there's a procedure that needs to be done surgically, and we tell the person, get blood ready. The person is like, it's not just that they should just cut it. And now I tell them, the getting blood ready is that if it is needed, there are some procedures that it will be needed. There are some procedures that it will be given even before you start the procedure. There are some procedures that it is if, but so as not to delay and get to the point of irreversibility. This blood, we call it save and keep. Just let's have it there. Because sometimes people leave the hotel and say, but I donated 1 or 2 pints now. They didn't use it for my patient. They didn't use it for my patient. It's not that the hospital is trying to gather blood. It was that in case there's a need for transfusion, we cannot be looking for blood at that time. Let the blood be ready. So maybe I quickly run through some disease conditions associated with cardiovascular system. And a very common one is hypertension. Hypertension is very common, very common. In fact, it's associated with aging, because increasing age and things like that. Hypertension simply means increased blood pressure. That's a very common sign of hypertension. Hypertension is a silent killer. That is, it doesn't give any notice until the problem has occurred. So that's why we say people should go for routine checkups. And it's very important. Number 2 that I need to talk about is that you must have heard things about heart attack. And we see it in movies now.
Yeah.
And sometimes I laugh because these directors didn't consult the doctor before.
Well, is that exaggerated?
No, it's not. Now, what is heart attack? Let us not forget that the heart itself is a muscular organ, and it's also an organ that needs blood. It is the one pumping blood to every other place. But it needs blood. So the heart has its own blood vessel. Just like other organs have their blood vessel.
So it doesn't push out all of the blood, it retains some.
It pushes out, but part of those going out now coming through other branches, coronary artery, to enter the artery and to feed it. Now, for whatever reason, maybe there's a plaque, or there's an obstruction, or there's a thrombus that gets dislodged and blocks the vessel or any part of the vessel feeding the heart. That part of the heart that the blood feeds won't get blood. That part starts to die. Now, the heart attack is the last phase, what we call, actually the heart attack is a street language. In medical language, we call it myocardial infarction. That is, a large chunk of the heart is dead. So once it is dead, it will not respond to contraction. When other parts of the heart are contracting, the dead parts will expand. So the blood will not go out. Now, but it's a spectrum, coronary artery disease. And the first phase is that the person starts to have angina. That's what we call chest pain. Just like chest pain, you know. So, but we tell people once you have chest pain, there are a lot of things that can be occurring at that time. Some people will say it is a gastric acid disease. No problem. But you need to come to the hospital and we'll check. Is it the heart or is it the esophagus and the stomach? But there are some common signs. Number 1, once there's the pain, is on the left side of the heart. It radiates to the left side of the neck, to the left side of the arm, sometimes both arms, and then underneath. So if the pain is like that, it's most likely from the heart. The person should come to the hospital. Something must be done. Because the last phase is the heart attack. And it's associated with pain. It's different from cardiac arrest. Cardiac arrest is another thing. Cardiac arrest is, okay, I need to say this. You should have, well, I was going to say that somebody will be asking, what's making the heart pump? There's it's just like electricity, electrical impulses. These impulses can shut down for different reasons. Once they shut down, the heart will not pump. So usually we term that sudden cardiac arrest. Or if the impulses become irregular, because impulses are regular, that's why this one will contract, that one will dilate, this one will dilate, that one will contract. But if it becomes regular, nothing is going out effectively. And once blood is not getting to the brain and other vital organs, the person shuts down and die. This one that you're shaking your head. A very common one now is heart failure. Maybe heart failure, let's not look at the big grammar in defining it. Heart failure simply means the heart is failing. It's not pumping enough blood, sufficient enough for other parts of the body. So we say the heart is failing, and it's a process. And a very common symptom of heart failure. There are many causes of it. But the ultimate goal is that the heart is trying, you know, but it's not enough. Usually, this is how a very common symptom. We'll get there, we'll get to other ones, but the very common symptom is that the person, let's assume a person can walk 4 kilometers without resting. But if the heart starts to become insufficient, instead of 10 kilometers, now we'll have to walk 5 kilometers and have to rest. Because other parts of the body said, we are not getting enough blood, enough oxygen, so I beg, rest. and the heart is working so hard to keep pace, but no matter how it tries, it's not sufficient enough. That's heart failure. Now, when it becomes worsened, so that even at rest, it is not sufficient enough. Usually, it is when it is exercised. Then gradually, once it worsens, it gets to the time that at rest, the person is feeling tired, breathing heavily because it now has to get in more oxygen to compensate for the failure of the heart. Then when that starts to happen, now I said this is a closed circuit. Blood is leaving the lungs, coming to the heart. So if the blood in the heart is not being pumped enough, there will be some blood remaining in the heart, and then there will be a backlog in the lungs. So once there's a backlog in the lungs, the person starts to cough because the fluid remaining in the lungs, the person gets irritated, starts to cough. Then when the person wants to sleep at night, tells you, I need extra pillow. I can't sleep without pillows. So because the person has to be in how should I put it, heads up position, But once he lies down, the fluid that is backed up in the lungs will not allow the person to breathe well. The person, Now we have terminology for all this, but I deliberately decided to describe it. So when people are having such symptoms, they should get to the hospital on time. So we've identified one. Once they're having chest pain, come to the hospital on time. Once you notice that you are getting tired easily, you are not accomplishing the same work done with the same, just get to the hospital. Doctor, this one I can't sleep, lying down. Doctor, this one I'm just coughing. There could be other causes for the cough, but heart failure is also a cause of cough. Pedal edema. Once the heart is not pumping well, the blood will start to get congested in the lower parts of the body. So that's why you see them, their limbs will get swollen. You said once they lift up the limbs, after a while, it will become normalized. But once they drop the limbs, it becomes edematous, swollen, because the heart is not contracting well. Lastly, I don't know if I still have time.
Just a few minutes.
Maybe I should say this. There's a need for a regular assessment, regular medical assessment. All these that I've said, and many more disease conditions, do not speak up on time. We call them silent killers. So, but once you do a checkup regularly, the doctor and yourself get to know if there's a problem. And once identified early enough, the person has a long time for intervention. Most of these things are preventable. Thank you.
You said we need, in just a minute, we need medical checkup, regularly. But it is such that in our society, it is really expensive. I think that maybe some of the reasons, factors why people, do not readily make themselves available for this.
Well, I used to agree, but now I disagree. Now we have NHIS. Now we have OHIS, that is Osun State Health Insurance Scheme. So,
does it cover regular medical checkup?
Yes, to a large extent, if not completely, to a large extent. Then number next is that you cannot compare the costs of prevention to the cost of curative medicine. How much a CT scan now, for those in Nigeria watching us, maybe it's like 40,000, 50,000, maybe more in some other places. So how much would echo be? Echo should be maybe one of the cardiovascular things we actually do, if there's a reason for it. How much is echo? But if there's a stroke, that is, in fact, I bet you have to do serious CT scans, or even MRI. MRI is far expensive than CT scan. That's just one test, though, when the stroke has happened. Not the assessment, not the assessment. I'm talking about curative. You know, so we cannot.
Quickly, in few seconds, how often should a regular checkup be?
Yes, that's a very big question. You know, but we will usually say minimum of once a year. However, based on what we find, we will now determine the frequency with which you have it done. You know, if the person is okay, there's no problem. Next year, let's come. Then with increasing age, the frequency you have to increase, because increasing age is a risk factor for different other conditions.
Doctor, thank you. You will attest that I kept my part of the bargain, allowing Dr. Ogungbemi hold the longer part of the conversation. Well, for my reward, I request that you spread the word about Spring Clinic. Do the work of an evangelist. Let us get millions of views on all Western Spring Television's social media platforms. You don't have to be a doctor to be able to help others get well and live better. Prevention is in our hands, treatments in the medic's hands, and cure in the hands of the Almighty. Desirous of a healthy and wealthy world, it begins with you. I look forward to another highly insightful edition of Spring Clinic on your channel of choice, Western Spring Television. I am Temitope Ajijola Oluwaola.
Jáde mọ̀rìnwó la kọ́kọ́ rí ọwọ́ gẹ́gẹ́ ní síwájú ìjó ẹsẹ̀ katakata ní síwájú rìn bẹ́ẹ̀ bá ti ń gbúrò wa a tún ti dé náà nù ẹ káàbọ̀ sórí ètò Owambe Unlimited pẹ̀lú èmi ọmọ yín olólùfẹ́ yín ọ̀rẹ́ yín Suliat tẹ́túmọ̀ sí Morenikeji ẹ lè pè mí ní Susu tó bá wẹ lómi a sọ pé ìyálòde àríyá gbogbo orúkọ tẹ́ ẹ bá pè mí kò sí èyí tí mi ò ní jẹ yín ẹ farabalẹ̀ kẹ́ ẹ máa gbádùn ètò Owambe Unlimited lórí ìkànnì Western Spring Television ní ìkànnì 190 ibẹ̀ ni Owambe Unlimited ń bọ̀ wá ẹ fàkùrẹ̀ tẹ̀dí kẹ́ ẹ máa gbádùn ètò àríyá wa.
Mo ń sọ fún yín pé ẹ máa wo Owambe Unlimited lórí Western Spring Television.
Tó wá rí.
Kò ṣeé má gbọ́ ìròyìn.
Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
ẹni tó bá lọ ló bọ̀ àtàlọ́ àtàbọ̀ wa kàṣà ìdára kàṣà ìsúnwọ̀n láṣẹ tó lódùmarè ẹ mọ̀ ṣàmì o kẹ́ mọ̀ fọwọ́ àdúrà kẹ́ mọ̀ fi bọ́jú pẹ̀lú ìwúre yìí náà ni mo fi ń kí n pẹ́ tu kù dédé àsìkò yìí ẹ káàbọ̀ ẹ kú gbúròó lórí ètò yìí ètò wa àkọ́mọlédè Rèmídò ìkànnì Western Spring Television rèé ìkànnì àádọ́wà ní olóore Star Times níbi tẹ́ ti ń darapọ̀ mọ́ wa ó bá sì jẹ́ pé àwọn ojú òpó ìbánidọ́rẹ̀ẹ́ gbogbo tó gbajúgbajà lẹ́yìn wà omi ẹ̀kọ́ ara ẹ̀kọ́ náà ló ti jáde wá ẹ ṣeun gan ni àjọṣe wa kò ní bàjẹ́ mo ń kí yín pé ẹ káàbọ̀ lákọ̀tún sórí ètò fún tòní gẹ́gẹ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe mọ̀ pé ìpele báyìí làlùbọ́sà àdìṣọ tiẹ̀ ní ìpele ètò náà làgbàdo tó mọ tiẹ̀ ètò yìí náà ó sì ṣe kí ni ó ti ní àwọn ètò àtìlànà tiẹ̀ tá a máa ń tẹ̀lé ẹ̀dẹ̀ tí mọ̀ pé gbogbo ìgbà tẹ́ bá ti láǹfààní láti darapọ̀ mọ́ wa lórí ètò yìí ẹ máa ń tún gbọ́ tuntun ẹ máa ń rí tuntun ẹ máa ń mọ tuntun ṣe wá rí tòní náà kò tún níyàtọ̀ bí ò ṣe wípé ẹ tún mú nǹkan tuntun gẹ́gẹ́ bí ẹ̀kọ́ nínú abala méjèèjì tó wà lórí ètò àmọ́ ṣáájú ohun gbogbo ó kọ ọmọ nìjánu ọmọ o torí pé kí ni kálukú ló kọ tiẹ̀ ó kọ tèmi sì rèé mo ń tọ́jú ẹ̀ ò bá òun ṣe ń tọ́jú nǹkan tó bá ní Olúṣọ́ Òjó ló kọ mí ìyá àjọ pèdèpèdè yìí ìyá Kọ́mọlédè mo tún kí yín òpin ẹ̀ka àbọ̀ sórí àkọ́tún ètò fún tòní lágbára lọ́wọ́ Ọlọ́run lẹ́yìn tí mò ń kí yín yé àlọ́dẹ̀ darapọ̀ mọ́ Yẹmí Alára yẹn ní abala ààbọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ gẹ́gẹ́ bí ọ̀rọ̀ Yorùbá tó sọ pé ààbọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ la sọ fọmọlúàbí nígbà tó bá dénú ẹ̀ tán yóò di òdìdí lẹ́yìn eléyìí ni a padà wá sórí tábìlì ìkẹ́kọ̀ọ́ ṣẹ́rí lórí tábìlì ìkẹ́kọ̀ọ́ fún tòní àyà ní agbo gírámà nínú èdè Yorùbá gẹ́gẹ́ bí mo ṣe máa ń tẹnumọ́ fún yín pé kò sí tẹ́rí tó wà nínú gbogbo àwọn èdè àgbáyé tó kù àfi tí ọ̀bà dáa tẹ́ bá rí inú èdè tiwọn lẹ̀ lè rí inú èdè Yorùbá náà àwọn náà ní gírámà àní gírámà wọ́n ní vocabulary Yorùbá náà ní vocabulary tiwa kí ló tún wá kù kò sẹ́ni Ọlọ́run ò ṣe fún ẹ wo ẹ jẹ́ àlọ́jàre kálọ̀rẹ́ bomi ọgbọ́n mu lọ́dọ̀ Yẹmí Alára bá a bá dé káwá bọ́ sórí tábìlì kẹ́kọ̀ọ́ ẹ kú kalẹ̀.
The butterfly which flies against the thorns will tear its clothes. Làbàlábá tí ó dìgbò lẹ̀gún aṣọ rẹ̀ ó yá o àmọ̀ràn pé ṣọ́ra yéé yájú sájú ni lọ béèyàn bá jù ọ́ lọ má yájú sí bọ̀wọ̀ fúnrú wọn bàbá wa ń sọ̀rọ̀ ajúnilọ nílẹ̀ Yorùbá kò túmọ̀ sẹ́ni jù ọ́ lọ lọ́jọ́ orí nìkan o àwọn tí ń bẹ ń pọ̀ àtàtà bọ̀wọ̀ fúnrú wọn má yájú sí wọn káwọn tí ń bẹ lẹ́yìn tiẹ̀ náà tán wọ̀ lọ́ọ̀kan tán sì ń gbàdúrà káwọn náà débi tó wà lébọ̀ fún wọn náà kán sì má yájú sí ọ ajura wa lọ o tìjàkadì kọ́ kò sì rántí pé ẹni bá jù ni lọ ó lè jù nínú k'Ẹlẹ́dùmarè ó jọ̀ọ́ kó mọ́ mú wa o kó sì mọ́ fà wá lẹ́yìn tí ó mú wa lọ́wọ́ àmín Yẹmí Alára ń pé àní dààmú o tí a ò sì ní ta.
ó ṣeun Yẹmí Alára náà lẹ ti gbọ́ òun o ẹ̀dì í mú ẹ fi sọ́wọ́ àlàáfíà kẹ́ mọ́ bá a fi jẹun pé kí ni ajúra wa lọ kì í ṣe tìjàkadì èmi tí ẹ jẹ́rìí ojúlówó ọmọ Yorùbá gbogbo yín ẹ ó mọ̀ bọ̀wọ̀ fágbà ó yẹ já lọ lónìí mo ti yan lẹ́ẹ̀kan pé a sọ̀rọ̀ lórí ẹ̀ka gírámà nínú èdè Yorùbá ẹ má gbàgbé pé yàtọ̀ sí lójú móhùnmáwòrán tẹ̀ tí ń wò mí yé ẹ láǹfààní àti tẹ̀lé wa kẹ́ darapọ̀ láwọn ìkànnì ìbánidọ́rẹ̀ẹ́ gbogbo bó ti gbajúgbajà tẹ́ ẹ ti mọ̀ gẹ́gẹ́ bí ẹni mowó tó fi dórí YouTube Western Spring TV àwa ń bẹ̀ kétékété ńlọmọlẹ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ tí ń wò lójú ìwòran yín o lónìí ẹ jẹ́ àtẹ̀wájú ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe kí ni mo pè é ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe láfẹ́yẹ̀ nínú àwọn gírámà èdè Yorùbá tá a sọ nípa ọ̀rọ̀ nínú èdè Yorùbá ó wá gan ni kókó ó jẹ́ kò ṣeé má ní nínú gbólóhùn èdè Yorùbá ìyẹn ni pé tá a bá sọ pé a kọ gbólóhùn sílẹ̀ tá a bá tí ì rí ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ń bẹ̀ onítùmọ̀ ẹ̀kọ́ ṣe àtòjọ ọ̀rọ̀ lásán nítorí pé ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ni kókó àti kò ṣeé má ní nínú gbogbo gbólóhùn tí èdè Yorùbá ní ìdí nìyí tá a fi máa ń pe ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ní òpómúléró nínú gbólóhùn ẹ wo àwọn àpẹẹrẹ tá a kọ sójú ìwòran yín bàbá kọ́ ilé tẹ́ bá wo gbólóhùn yẹn kọ́ tó wà ńbẹ̀ ó ní ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe mo jẹ ẹ̀bà jẹ́ yẹn ó ní ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ọdẹ pa ẹran ọ̀yà pa tó wà láàrin ẹ̀ ó gangan ni ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ṣe rí pé tá a bá yọ àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ kọ̀ọ̀kan tá a bá yọ jẹ pa kọ́ tá a bá yọ kúrò nínú àwọn gbólóhùn yẹn kò ní nítumọ̀ la fi pè ní kókó kò ṣeé má ní àti òpómúléró gbólóhùn ẹ wá jẹ́ á tẹ̀síwájú nínú èdè Yorùbá oríṣi méjì ni àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe jẹ́. ṣe rárá àwọn ìṣe méjèèjì wọ̀nyí wọ́n tún wá ní ọmọ lábẹ́, màá ṣàlàyé ẹ̀ lẹ́yọ kọ̀ọ̀kan. àkọ́kọ́ ná ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe onísílébù kan. àpẹẹrẹ kejì ní ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe onísílébù méjì. ẹ má gbàgbé mo ti sọ̀túnmọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe fún wa, mo wá ní oríṣi méjì ló wà, onísílébù kan àti onísílébù méjì. ní àgbọn ìsọ̀rí onísílébù kan, ìyẹn làwọn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe tó yẹ pé kò kí ń ju ẹyọ ọ̀rọ̀ kan ṣoṣo, kì í ju sílébù ẹyọ kan ṣoṣo, ó máa ń jẹ́ àkànpọ̀ ìró fáwẹ́lì, ìró kọ́nsọ́náǹtì àti fáwẹ́lì á dúró papọ̀, á wá jẹ́ ọ̀rọ̀ ẹyọ kan ṣoṣo. bí àpẹẹrẹ nínú àwọn àpẹẹrẹ tí mo kà lẹ́ẹ̀kan pé ọdẹ pa ẹran, ẹ rí i pé pa, jẹ, gbé, fò, dùn àti bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ bẹ́ẹ̀ bá ṣe lè rántí àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe onísílébù kan nìyẹn. bí àpẹẹrẹ ẹ jẹ́ ká lu àwọn eléyìí ní gbólóhùn. Olú pa eku, pa yẹn lọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe, sílébù kan ni ẹ̀kan náà la pè jáde lẹ́nu. Bàbá kọ́ ilé, kọ́ yẹn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe nítorí ẹ̀kan la pè jáde. Ajé lọ sí ọjà, lọ tó wà nú ẹ̀ òun lọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe, sílébù kan ni. ẹyẹ ọ̀kín ti fò lọ o, fò tó wà ń bẹ̀ ńkọ́, sílébù kan nìyẹn. ni pé àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe onísílébù kan wọn kì í ní ju sílébù kan lọ. tẹ́ ẹ bá ti rí wọn, ìró kọ́nsọ́náǹtì àti ìró fáwẹ́lì á jọ dúró papọ̀, á dẹ̀ jẹ́ ọ̀rọ̀ kan ṣoṣo tá a lè pè jáde nígbà kan. ó jẹ́ àpẹẹrẹ ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe onísílébù kan. ó yẹ mú mi síyùn ná, ẹ jẹ́ ń lọ kábọ̀ wá. tá a bá dé màá ṣàlàyé lórí ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe onísílébù méjì. Akọ́mọlédè tẹ̀síwájú. Èdè Yorùbá jẹ́ ọ̀kan lára àwọn èdè tí wọ́n ń sọ ní agbègbè Niger Congo. Èdè Yorùbá gbajúgbajà ní àwọn orílẹ̀-èdè tó ń bẹ ní ẹkùn ìwọ̀ oòrùn ilẹ̀ adúláwọ̀. Ó kéré tán, àwọn ènìyàn bíi mílíọ̀nù 14 ló ń sọ èdè Yorùbá lónìí. Ètò akọ́mọlédè ló ń dé sójú ìwòran yín láti iléeṣẹ́ móhùnmáwòrán WSTV ìkànnì 150 channel 190 lórí StarTimes. Yorùbá dùn púpọ̀, Yorùbá ò lè kú, Yorùbá ò lè parun. Tiwa làṣà, tiwa lèdè, tiwa nìṣẹ̀ṣe akọ́mọlédè. ẹ ṣeun mo kí yín, ẹ káàbọ̀ padà lórí ètò akọ́mọlédè. Remido náà la ṣe wà, ìkànnì Western Spring Television rèé. bẹ́ẹ̀ bá ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ ń darapọ̀ mọ́ wa lónìí, à ń sọ̀rọ̀ nípa ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe gẹ́gẹ́ bí ìkan lára àìsọ̀rí gírámà èdè Yorùbá. mo sì ṣàlàyé fún wa pé ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe jẹ́ kókó, kò ṣeé màní àti òpómúléró fún gbólóhùn. mo wá fún wa ní àpẹẹrẹ pé oríṣi méjì ni wọ́n, onísílébù kan àti onísílébù méjì. mo ti ṣàlàyé ìtumọ̀ onísílébù kan, yẹn ni pé ìró kọ́nsọ́náǹtì kan àti ìró fáwẹ́lì tó fún wa ní ọ̀rọ̀ kan ṣoṣo. ní báyìí ẹ jẹ́ ká wo àpẹẹrẹ ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe onísílébù méjì. ìyẹn túmọ̀ sí pé ó máa ń ní ju ẹyọ sílébù kan lọ nígbà tá a bá fẹ́ pè wọ́n. ọ̀kọ̀ọ̀kan àwọn sílébù yẹn ló dẹ̀ máa ń jẹ́ àkànpọ̀ ìró kọ́nsọ́náǹtì àti ìró fáwẹ́lì. ẹ jẹ́ n fún yín lápẹẹrẹ kí àlàyé yẹn lè yé yín. bí àpẹẹrẹ tí a bá sọ pé bàjẹ́, sànjẹ́, gbàgbọ́, bẹ̀wò àti àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ míì tó wá sí yín lọ́kàn, tẹ́ bá ti gbúròó wọn bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn, ẹ pé sílébù méjì ló wà nínú wọn. ibi tá a wá ń lọ gangan rèé. ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe onísílébù méjì yìí, òun náà tún wá pín sí ìpele méjì. ẹ má dàrú o, oríṣi ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe méjì ló wà. àkòrí gbòòrò, onísílébù kan, onísílébù méjì. a sọ pé onísílébù méjì yìí náà ó tún wá pín sí ọ̀nà méjì. àkọ́kọ́ ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ẹlẹ́là, ìkejì rẹ̀ ni ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe aláìlẹ́là. gẹ́gẹ́ bá a ṣe pé tán bá ní nǹkan ní ẹ̀là, wọ́n ní ẹ̀là lọ̀rọ̀, bá a bá là á kò lè yé ni. ìyẹn ni àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe tó ní sílébù méjì tá a lè fi ọ̀rọ̀ míì ká fi là á láàrin wọn. bí àpẹẹrẹ bẹ́ẹ̀ bá mú búrẹ́dì nísìn tẹ́ ẹ láàrin rẹ̀, tẹ́ wá mú àkà tẹ́ rí bọ́, bẹ́ẹ̀ gẹ́lẹ́ lọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ẹlẹ́là. bí àpẹẹrẹ bàjẹ́, gbàgbọ́, túká, rẹ́jẹ, báwí, bẹ̀wò. ṣẹ́rí gbogbo àwọn àpẹẹrẹ tẹ́ ń wò lójú ìran yìí, tẹ́ ẹ bá lò wọ́n nínú gbólóhùn, ẹ jẹ́ á lò wọ́n nínú gbólóhùn kẹ́ ẹ lè rí àpẹẹrẹ tí mò ń sọ. tá a bá sọ pé bàjẹ́, ẹ rí i pé àwa lò nínú gbólóhùn pé Olú ba àga Òjó jẹ́. ṣẹ́rí pé àti ya bàjẹ́ yẹn ó dẹ̀ sì nítumọ̀ nǹkan tó ń jẹ́ ẹlẹ́là nìyẹn. mo gba Ọlọ́run gbọ́, àti ya gbàgbọ́, ẹ rí i pé a fi mo sí, ẹ dẹ̀ lè forúkọ ara yín síbẹ̀. ìyá kọ́mọlédè gba Ọlọ́run gbọ́ àti là á. túká, olórí tú ìgbìmọ̀ ká. ṣé rí i pé àti ya túká bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn pẹ̀lú ọ̀rọ̀ orúkọ kan, ìyẹn tó ń jẹ́ ẹ̀là tó wà ń bẹ̀ nìyẹn. rẹ́jẹ, ẹ̀gbọ́n rẹ́ àbúrò rẹ̀ jẹ. ìyẹn ni pé a ti fi ọ̀rọ̀ orúkọ kan sáàrin méjèèjì, ó dẹ̀ nítumọ̀. àkíyèsí wa fi hàn pé nígbà tá a bá ń lo àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ẹlẹ́là, gẹ́gẹ́ bá a ṣe lónú àwọn gbólóhùn tá a ti sọ síwájú yẹn kò sí ní apá kan nínú ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ẹlẹ́là yẹn kò sí bó ṣe fẹ́ dá ní ìtumọ̀ láì bá ṣe pé a bá gbé apá kejì sí i bí àpẹẹrẹ tẹ bá sọ pé mo gba Ọlọ́run ẹ rí i pé gbọ́ yẹn ó sì gbọ́dọ̀ tẹ̀lé kó lè fún wa ní ìtumọ̀ yẹn délẹ̀délẹ̀ àkíyèsí mìíràn tá a wá rí i pé nígbà míì tí a bá lo irúfẹ́ àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe yìí láìsí nínú gbólóhùn ó tún máa ń fún wa ní ìtumọ̀ ẹ jẹ́ kí n fún wa lápẹẹrẹ bàjẹ́ nísìn tá a bá fẹ́ lo bàjẹ́ láì jẹ́ pé a bá là rárá kẹ́ ẹ fi lè mọ̀ pé ó lè dá dúró ní ìtumọ̀ ara tiẹ̀ tá a bá sọ pé kẹ̀kẹ́ Olú ti bàjẹ́ ṣe mọ̀ pé yẹn ní ìtumọ̀ ó yàtọ̀ sí pé òjò bà kẹ̀kẹ́ Olú jẹ́ kẹ̀kẹ́ Olú ti bàjẹ́ ó sì ní ìtumọ̀ gbàgbọ́ tá a bá fẹ́ lò tá a bá sọ pé mo gbàgbọ́ pé Ọlọ́run wà ṣe ni pé òun náà ní ìtumọ̀ tiẹ̀ tó fún wa ìyẹn ni pé àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ẹlẹ́là yẹn bá a ṣe lè là á ká mú ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ká mú ọ̀rọ̀ orúkọ ká fi sí àárín rẹ̀ náà la tún lè ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ ká kó wọn papọ̀ yálà ní iwájú tàbí ní ẹ̀yìn ọ̀rọ̀ orúkọ tí wọ́n bá ń bá ṣiṣẹ́ pọ̀ òun lẹ fi rí àpẹẹrẹ mo gbàgbọ́ pé Ọlọ́run wà ṣe mọ̀ pé tá a bá fẹ́ là á sọ pé mo gba Ọlọ́run gbọ́ ìyẹn nípa máa fi ọ̀rọ̀ orúkọ sí àárín rẹ̀ ṣùgbọ́n ẹ là ó ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ẹlẹ́là ó sì máa ń ní ìtumọ̀ nígbà tá a bá lò wọ́n nínú gbólóhùn ká tó máa tẹ̀síwájú ẹ já kan sódì kejì lọ́hùn-ún. onírúurú ọ̀kan òjọ̀kan ní àwọn oúnjẹ ilẹ̀ Yorùbá bí wọ́n ti wuyì lójú bẹ́ẹ̀ ni wọ́n sì kún fún adùn àti ìtẹ́lọ́rùn tí kò lẹ́gbẹ́ pàápàá nígbà tí ọbẹ̀ tó dọ́ṣọ̀ pẹ̀lú ẹran oríṣiríṣi àti àwọn ẹja bá ń ṣe alábàárìn àwọn oúnjẹ òkèlè bíi ẹ̀bà àbí iyán funfun lẹ́lẹ́ ẹ ó máa gbọ́ àwọn ìpèdè bíi iyán lóúnjẹ ọkà lóògùn àìrí rárá là ń jẹ̀kọ kẹnu ó mọ̀dìlẹ̀ ní ti gúgúrú. ètò akọ́mọlédè ló ń dé sójú ìwòran yín láti iléeṣẹ́ móhùnmáwòrán WSTV ìkànnì 150 channel 190 lórí StarTimes. Yorùbá dùn púpọ̀ Yorùbá ò lè kú Yorùbá ò lè parun tiwa làṣà tiwa lèdè tiwa nìṣẹ̀ṣe akọ́mọlédè. ẹ ṣeun mo kí yín ẹ káàbọ̀ padà à ń ṣàlàyé lórí ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe gẹ́gẹ́ bí ọ̀kan lára ìsọ̀rí gbòógì nínú gírámà Yorùbá a ti mẹ́nubà ìtumọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe àti oríṣi rẹ̀ tí í ṣe ẹlẹ́là àti aláìlẹ́là mo ti ṣàlàyé ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ẹlẹ́là fún yín ní báyìí ẹ jẹ́ ká wá ṣàlàyé ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe aláìlẹ́là gẹ́gẹ́ bí orúkọ rẹ̀ ti dún aláìṣeélà ìyẹn làwọn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe tó jẹ́ pé a lè fi ọ̀rọ̀ míì bọ àárín rẹ̀ ìyẹn ni pé a lè pinrú ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ sí méjì bó ṣe wà yẹn náà ló ṣe máa wà títí ayérayé bí àpẹẹrẹ pàdé padà gbèsè rántí gbogbo àwọn nǹkan bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn a lè là wọ́n aláìlẹ́là ni wọ́n àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe aláìlẹ́là yìí ó jẹ́ àkànpọ̀ àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ tó yẹ pé kò ṣeé yà sọ́tọ̀ tá a bá ti lò wọ́n nínú gbólóhùn bí àpẹẹrẹ ẹ wá wọlé pàdé ní ìsìn a lè sọ pé Àjàyí pa Akíndé ṣẹ́rí pé kò ní ìtumọ̀ a gbọ́dọ̀ lò papọ̀ ni a fi sọ pé aláìlẹ́là Àjàyí pàdé Akin ní ọjà ṣẹ́rí pé pàdé yẹn ò ṣeé yà padà ní ìsìn a lè sọ pé Olú pa Èkó sídà ṣẹ́rí pé kò rọrùn kò ní ìtumọ̀ la fi sọ pé Olú padà sí Èkó aláìlẹ́là ní padà yẹ kò sọgbọ́n tẹ́ fẹ́ dá sí ọba ti gbéṣẹ̀ a lè sọ pé ọba ti gbé wàjà kò lọ bẹ́ẹ̀ ọba ti gbèsè yẹn ni pé kábíyèsí papòdà ó ti wàjà àwa máa ń rí o nígbà míì tó yẹ pé ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe aláìlẹ́là yìí ó lè ju sílébù méjì lọ bí àpẹẹrẹ àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe aláìlẹ́là míì wà tó yẹ pé ó ju sílébù méjì lọ bí àpẹẹrẹ jókòó wàhálà dààmú àti bẹ́ẹ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ ẹ rí i pé jókòó yẹn àmì ohùn mẹ́ta ni sílébù mẹ́ta ló dúró bẹ́ẹ̀ tó máa sọ pé jókòó níbẹ̀ yẹn jókòó mídòmí sílébù mẹ́ta nìyẹn wàhálà ìwọ ọmọ ìmá wàhálà mi ò ṣe rí i pé sílébù mẹ́ta ni dààmú ìgé dààmú ìyá rẹ̀ dòdòmí sílébù mẹ́ta dààmú àkíyèsí mìíràn tún wá ní pé bá a ṣe rí pẹ̀lú àwọn àpẹẹrẹ tẹ́ ti wò yẹn pé àfàgùn ìró fáwẹ́lì tó gbẹ̀yìn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ó máa ń wáyé nínú àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe aláìlẹ́là yẹn ìdí abájọ ni pé ìró kọ́nsọ́náǹtì ló máa bẹ̀rẹ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ tó tẹ̀lé wọn tààrà tẹ́ ẹ bá ti rí tí ìró kọ́nsọ́náǹtì tó bẹ̀rẹ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ orúkọ àbọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe tó fẹ́ tẹ̀lé wọn yẹn ẹ ti mọ̀ pé kí ni o ẹ ti mọ̀ pé ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe aláìlẹ́là nìyẹn lẹ́ fi rí jókòó ṣe rí pé ó yẹn pé méjì wàhálà ẹ rí i pé àyàn méjì ló wà ń bẹ̀ àfàgùn rẹ̀ torí pé ọ̀rọ̀ orúkọ tó tẹ̀lé ìró kọ́nsọ́náǹtì òun ló bẹ̀rẹ̀ rẹ̀ ni mo fi sọ pé tá a bá ti rí ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe nínú gbólóhùn àkọ́kọ́ náà ẹ jẹ́ ká fi sọ́kàn pé ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe yẹn ni kókó inú gbólóhùn òun ni kò ṣeé má ní òun sì ni òpómúléró nínú àwọn gbólóhùn èdè Yorùbá bákan náà ìsọ̀rí méjì gbòòrò la lè pín ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe Yorùbá sí ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ẹlẹ́là ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe aláìlẹ́là bẹ́ẹ̀ sì rèé ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe aláìlẹ́là yìí òun kò sí nǹkan kan tẹ́ ẹ fẹ́ ṣe sí bó ṣe dúró nìyẹn tẹ́ wá rí ọ̀rọ̀ ìṣe ẹlẹ́là yẹn àlẹ́ tó lè ju sílébù kan lọ àsìlè tó lè jù bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣùgbọ́n nígbà tẹ́ bá ń lò ó nínú àpẹẹrẹ lẹ́ẹ̀fì máa mọ̀. Àbújá ni olú ìlú orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́. Ọjọ́ 12 oṣù 12 ọdún 1991 ni wọ́n gbé ibùjókòó agbára Nàìjíríà kúrò nílùú Èkó lọ sílùú Àbújá lásìkò ìṣèjọba ológun ọ̀gágun fẹ̀yìntì Ibrahim Babangida. Ìlú Àbújá ní ìlú kẹjọ tí èrò pọ̀ sí jùlọ nílẹ̀ Nàìjíríà ó sì jẹ́ ìlú olódi tó wà ní àárín gbùngbùn. Gbogbo àwọn ilé-iṣẹ́ àti àjọ ìjọba kọ̀ọ̀kan ló ní olú ọ́fíìsì wọn nílùú Àbújá gẹ́gẹ́ bó ṣe jẹ́ pé ibẹ̀ gan ni ibùjókòó agbára ìṣàkóso ilẹ̀ Nàìjíríà. Lọ́dún 2003 ni àjọ Commonwealth gbé ìpàdé wọn wá síbẹ̀. Bẹ́ẹ̀ sì ni àjọ olókoòwò nílẹ̀ adúláwọ̀ ṣe lọ́dún 2014 kódà lọ́dún 2016. Àjọ tó ń rí sí ọ̀rọ̀ àwọn ọmọdé ìyẹn UNESCO gbà á gẹ́gẹ́ bí ibùdó ìkẹ́kọ̀ọ́ wọn. Díẹ̀ lára àwọn ibùdó tó gbajúgbajà nílùú Àbújá ni àpáta agbára Aso Rock, ilé aṣòfin àpapọ̀, ilé aṣojúṣòfin ilẹ̀ yìí, àpáta Zuma Rock, Millennium Park, báńkì àpapọ̀ ilẹ̀ Nàìjíríà CBN, mọ́ṣáláṣí àpapọ̀ àti ibùdó ilé ìjọsìn àpapọ̀ àwọn kìrìsìtẹ́nì. Ẹkùn ìdìbò 6 ló wà nílùú Àbújá: Abaji, Buhari, Gwagwalada, Kuje, Kwali àti Abuja Municipal. Kílìṣì tó jẹ́ ohun ìpanu tí wọ́n fi ẹran pèsè ló jẹ́ oúnjẹ tó wọ́pọ̀ tí gbogbo èèyàn sì nífẹ̀ẹ́ sí nílùú Àbújá. Ó jẹ́ ibùdó ìsinmi fún ọ̀pọ̀ àwọn arìnrìn-àjò láti ẹkùn kọ̀ọ̀kan nílẹ̀ Nàìjíríà nítorí pé àárín gbùngbùn ló wà. Ìlú Àbújá rèé o, ibùdó agbára ìṣàkóso ilẹ̀ Nàìjíríà, ògo ilẹ̀ adúláwọ̀. Èkó Lagos, Èkó akéte ìlú ọgbọ́n, Èkó akéte ìlú ìmọ̀, ọmọ ọlọ́gbọ́n dorí ẹja mú, àwọn òmùgọ̀ àdìímú nírù, ẹni dèkó tí ò gbọ́n ọgbọ́n rẹ̀ dọ̀run alákejì. Gẹ́gẹ́ bí àrọ́bá ẹni tó tẹ ìṣẹ́ridó tó sì kọ́kọ́ gbé ibẹ̀ lọ́dún 1699 ló jẹ́ ọdẹ tí orúkọ rẹ̀ ń jẹ́ Ògúnfúnminíre, ọmọ ọba ìlú Ilé Ifẹ̀ ní í ṣe. Ó máa ń ṣọdẹ lọ síbẹ̀ láti Ifẹ̀, ó sì pàgọ́ tó ti máa ń sinmi ṣáájú kó tún tó lọ bẹ ilé rẹ̀ wò. Nígbà tó yá, àwọn ọdẹ mìíràn wá darapọ̀ mọ́ láti ṣọdẹ. Nínú igbó yìí ni wọ́n bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní ṣọdẹ tí wọ́n sì ń pọ̀ sí pẹ̀lú àwọn ènìyàn wọn. Báyìí ni wọ́n ṣe bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní tàn kálẹ̀ tó fi dé gbogbo ibi tí Èkó fẹ̀ dé lónìí. Ìlú Èkó, ìlú ńlá. Ìlú Èkó yìí ni ibùdó agbára ìṣàkóso ilẹ̀ Nàìjíríà wà tẹ́lẹ̀ rí, pàápàá lásìkò ìjọba amúnisìn ṣáájú ọdún 1991 tí wọ́n gbé lọ sílùú Àbújá. Èkó àdèlé ọmọ agun àgẹ̀rẹ̀, Èkó ọmọ afíjú wọjà arìngbẹ́ndẹ́kẹ́, ọ̀bùn wọjà páṣíọ̀ṣíọ̀, ẹ̀yọ̀ ní bàbá Èkó, àríjó ṣe bí ọba. Èkó ọmọ odò tí ò ṣeé yájú sí, Èkó arómi sá lẹ́gbẹ́lẹ́gbẹ́.
Ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ nǹkan ló ń kojú àwọn ará àdúgbò, àwọn ará àwùjọ tí ohun ò dẹ̀ dókè. Ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ ìnira, ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ ìyà làwọn èèyàn ń kojú rẹ̀ ní àdúgbò. Ojú ọ̀nà tó kù díẹ̀ káàtó, iná ọba tó mẹ́ẹ̀ tó ń ṣe ségesège, àwọn tó ń hu ìwà àbàṣejẹ́ obì tí ń sun lẹ́rùn, àti àwọn nǹkan tí ò tí ì dé tí gbọ́ ìjọba. Ṣé wọ́n ní etí ọba nílé etí ọba lóko, èèyàn náà ló ń jẹ́ bẹ́ẹ̀. Òun náà ló jẹ́ kí ìkànnì Western Spring Television pé ètò tí ó jẹ́ kẹ́yìn ara lé ẹ̀yin ará àwùjọ kẹ́lẹ́ mọ́ sọ bí tí bàtà bá ti ń ta yín lẹ́sẹ̀ fún àwọn aláṣẹ ìjọba. Ohun tẹ́ ẹ ṣe ni wípé ẹ mú fóònù yín o, ẹ̀rọ ìbánisọ̀rọ̀ yín, ẹ dábù rẹ̀, ẹ mọ̀ yá ní gbọ́rọ̀, ẹ dábù rẹ̀. Ẹ ṣe àkàálẹ̀ ohun tó ń fẹ́ àmójútó ìjọba, ohun tó ń fẹ́ àmójútó àwọn aláṣẹ, ohun tó ń fẹ́ àmójútó àwọn elétò ìlera, àwọn elétò ààbò àti àwọn míì tí ọ̀rọ̀ kàn. Ẹ má jẹ́ kí fọ́nrán náà, ìyẹn fídíò tẹ́ máa ṣe àkàálẹ̀ rẹ̀ kó mọ̀ ju ìṣẹ́jú 2 tàbí 3 lọ. Ẹ má fi ṣọwọ́ sí wa ní orí WhatsApp lórí ẹ̀rọ 0803 865 1049 0803 865 1049. Ẹ jẹ́ kí gbogbo àwọn fọ́nrán yín, àwọn àwòrán yín kó máa wọlé. Orí ètò Ojú Ẹlẹ́rìí, ẹ̀yin gangan lẹ jẹ́ ojú ẹlẹ́rìí. Ohun táwọn èèyàn nílò, ohun tó ń jẹ àwọn èèyàn láwùjọ níyà, ilé tí ò nílé ìgbọ̀nsẹ̀, ibi tí ò níbi tó ti ń dẹ ẹ̀gbin nù, tó wá jẹ́ pé ẹ̀gbin wọn ní àwọn ará àdúgbò, àwọn aráàlú lára, gbogbo ẹ̀ ẹ fi tó àwọn aláṣẹ létí. Ohun tẹ́ ẹ nílò ní agbègbè yín, ẹ jẹ́ kí àwọn aláṣẹ mọ̀. Orúkọ mi ni Adéyẹmí Ọlábọ̀dé, èmi ni atọ́kùn ètò Ojú Ẹlẹ́rìí lórí Western Spring Television, ìkànnì 150 ní gbogbo ọjọ́ Ajé láago 2:00 ọ̀sán.
Ìlú Ìbàdàn. Ìlú Ìbàdàn ni olú ìlú àti ìlú tí ó tóbi jù ní ìpínlẹ̀ Ọ̀yọ́ tó wà ní ẹkùn ìwọ̀ oòrùn gúúsù ilẹ̀ Nàìjíríà. Kò dín ní èèyàn bíi mílíọ̀nù 6 tó ń gbé nígboro ìlú Ìbàdàn nìkan ṣoṣo. Odù Ifá ọ̀sẹ̀ méjì ni àwọn Yorùbá gbàgbọ́ pé ó tẹ ìlú Ìbàdàn dó. Àwọn ọmọ ìlú Ìbàdàn jẹ́ akíkanjú, wọ́n fẹ́ràn ìdàgbàsókè, ọ̀làjú ni wọ́n. Àwọn baba ńlá wọn sì jẹ́ jagunjagun. Àbájọ tí a fi máa ń gbọ́ nínú oríkì wọn pé Ìbàdàn Mèsì Ọ̀gọ̀, nílé Olúyọ̀lé, ìlú Ògúnmọ́lá olódògbò kẹ̀rí lójú ogun, Ìbàdàn ọmọ àjòròsàn, ọmọ àjẹ̀gbínyó, ọmọ àfikàràhùn fọ́ orí mu. Olúbàdàn lórúkọ oyè ọba ilẹ̀ Ìbàdàn. Máyẹ̀ Okùn Adé ló kọ́kọ́ jẹ baálẹ̀ nìbàdàn. Gẹ́gẹ́ bí ìlú ńlá, ọ̀pọ̀ àwọn iléeṣẹ́ àti àjọ ńláńlá ló wà nílùú Ìbàdàn. Ìbàdàn tó gbonílé tó gbé àlejò. Ọmọ Ìbàdàn kí ni sóò.
Gbẹ̀bíró kílẹ̀mọ̀ dahoro kọ́ọ̀dẹ́ má dìbò sí. bá ṣe gbé ètò yìí kalẹ̀ láti lè jẹ́ kóníkálukú fi ṣe òdiwọ̀n ìdílé wọn. òtítọ́ ọbẹ̀ ni pé kò sí ìdílé kan tí ò ní ìpèníjà àti ẹ̀. ṣùgbọ́n àtẹ́lẹwọ́ ẹni la fi ń tún ẹni ṣe. àti oníkálukú bá kọ sí ìpèníjà náà ìdílé yóò sọ bí ìdílé yóò ṣe rí. Gbẹ̀bíró ká finúkonú ká fikùnlukùn pẹ̀lú àwọn lọ́kọláya lọ́lọ́kan òjọ̀kan lórí ètò. níbẹ̀ lọ́mọ Afọlábí ó ti mọ tàkó tó béèrè sí wọn. láláì fìkan pé méjì lórí ọ̀rọ̀ tó ń dá òwòhòwò sílẹ̀ nínú ìdílé. bẹ́ẹ̀ sì làwọn àlejò náà yóò mọ jẹ́ ká mọ ọ̀nà tí wọ́n ń gbé gbà sílé wọn ò fi dàrú tí fi ń tò. Gbẹ̀bíró ẹ máa pàdé Múyìwá Àfọlábí lórí ètò yìí ní gbogbo ọjọ́ àbámẹ́ta láago 8 òwúrọ̀ tí àtúntẹ̀ rẹ̀ ó sì tún máa wá láàrin ọ̀sẹ̀ ní ìkànnì móhùnmáwòrán Western Spring Television ìkànnì 150 lórí StarTime. Gbẹ̀bíró tọ̀sẹ̀ yìí ó máa yàtọ̀ ní kò ní yàtọ̀ fọ́.
New York nílùú ńlá tó tóbi jù nílẹ̀ Amẹ́ríkà. Kódà iye ènìyàn tó wà níbẹ̀ ló fi 2% ju ti ìlú Los Angeles lọ. Ó jẹ́ ibùdó fún oríṣiríṣi àṣà, ìgbafẹ́, iṣẹ́ ọnà, ìmọ̀ ẹ̀rọ, òṣèlú, ẹ̀kọ́, ọrọ̀ ajé kódà tó fi máa rẹ́ ìdárayá. New York yìí ló gbàlejò ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ olùdókòwò kárí ayé tó sì fẹsẹ̀ múlẹ̀ gidi gan ni. Ìdí nìyí tí àwọn kan fi máa ń pè é ní olú ìlú orílẹ̀-èdè àgbáyé. Ohun ìdámọ̀ tó gbajúgbajà jù ní New York ní ère òmìnira Statue of Liberty, eléyìí tó ń ṣàfihàn bí ìlú náà ṣe fàyè gba onílé àtàlejò. Bẹ́ẹ̀ sì ni afárá Brooklyn kò lẹ́gbẹ́. Ó kéré tán 1000 ní oríṣi èdè tí wọ́n ń sọ ní New York. Èyí ló sì fa bí wọ́n ṣe máa ń sọ pé gbogbo èdè àgbáyé ló pé sílùú New York. Ní nǹkan ọdún 1624 ni àwọn èèyàn ẹ̀yà Dutch tẹ̀dó sí ibi tó ń jẹ́ New York báyìí. Amsterdam ni wọ́n ń pè é tẹ́lẹ̀ nígbà náà, àmọ́ lọ́dún 1664 ni wọ́n yí padà sí New York lẹ́yìn tí ọba King Charles kejì tí ti ilẹ̀ Gẹ̀ẹ́sì fún arákùnrin rẹ̀ ní ilẹ̀ ìyẹn Duke of York. Láti ọdún 1785 ló ti wá di olú ìlú ilẹ̀ Amẹ́ríkà títí di òní olónìí. Ó jẹ́ ìlú ńlá tó kún fún ọ̀pọ̀ iṣẹ́ ọnà àti ibùdó iṣẹ́ àtinúdá oríṣiríṣi fún gbogbo ìran ọmọnìyàn. Ìlú New York lórílẹ̀-èdè Amẹ́ríkà.
Bẹ́gùn ò bá jáde mọ̀rìnwó la kọ́kọ́ rí ọwọ́ gẹ́gẹ́ ní síwájú ìjó ẹsẹ̀ katakata ní síwájú rìn bẹ́ẹ̀ bá ti ń gbúrò wa a tún ti dé náà nù ẹ káàbọ̀ sórí ètò Owambe Unlimited pẹ̀lú èmi ọmọ yín olólùfẹ́ yín ọ̀rẹ́ yín Suliat tẹ́túmọ̀ sí Mọ́rẹ́níkejì ẹ lè pè mí ní Sùsù tó bá wẹ lómi a sọ pé ìyálòde àríyá gbogbo orúkọ tẹ́ ẹ bá pè mí kò sí èyí tí mi ò ní jẹ yín ẹ farabalẹ̀ kẹ́ ẹ máa gbádùn ètò Owambe Unlimited lórí ìkànnì Western Spring Television ní ìkànnì 190 ibẹ̀ ni Owambe Unlimited ń bọ̀ wá ẹ fàpùrẹ̀ tẹ̀dí kẹ́ ẹ máa gbádùn ètò àríyá wa.
Wọ́n sọ fún yín pé ẹ máa wo Owambe Unlimited lórí Western Spring Television.
Èkó Lagọ́ọ̀sì, Èkó akéte ìlú ọgbọ́n, Èkó akéte ìlú ìmọ̀, ọmọ ọlọ́gbọ́n dorí ẹja mú àwọn òmùgọ̀ àdìmú nírù. Ẹni dèkó tí ò gbọ́n ọgbọ́n rẹ̀ dọ̀run alákejì gẹ́gẹ́ bí àrọ́bá. Ẹni tó tẹ ìṣẹ́ridó tó sì kọ́kọ́ gbé ibẹ̀ lọ́dún 1699 ló jẹ́ ọdẹ tí orúkọ rẹ̀ ń jẹ́ Ògúnfúnminíre ọmọ ọba ìlú Ilé-Ifẹ̀ ní í ṣe. Ó máa ń ṣọdẹ lọ síbẹ̀ láti Ifẹ̀. Ó sì pàgọ́ tó ti máa ń sinmi ṣáájú kó tún tó lọ bẹ ilé rẹ̀ wò. Nígbà tó yá, àwọn ọdẹ mìíràn wá darapọ̀ mọ́ láti ṣọdẹ. Nínú igbó yìí ni wọ́n bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní ṣọdẹ tí wọ́n sì ń pọ̀ sí i pẹ̀lú àwọn ènìyàn wọn. Báyìí ni wọ́n ṣe bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní tàn kálẹ̀ tó fi dé gbogbo ibi tí Èkó fẹ̀ dé lónìí. Ìlú Èkó, ìlú ńlá. Ìlú Èkó yìí ni ibùdó agbára ìṣàkóso ilẹ̀ Nàìjíríà wà tẹ́lẹ̀ rí, pàápàá lásìkò ìjọba amúnisìn ṣáájú ọdún 1991 tí wọ́n gbé lọ sílùú Àbújá. Èkó àdèlé ọmọ agun àgẹ̀rẹ̀, Èkó ọmọ afíjú wọjà arìn gbẹ́ndẹ́kẹ́, ọ̀bùn wọjà páṣíọ̀ṣíọ̀, ẹ̀yọ̀ ní bàbá Èkó, àríjó ṣe bí ọba. Èkó ọmọ odò tí ò ṣeé yájú sí, Èkó arómi sá lẹ̀gbẹ́lẹ̀gbẹ́.
Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Àsìkò yìí ẹ̀yin tèmi ẹ̀yin ti Aláṣẹ ẹ̀yin ti wà lórí ètò Aláṣẹ níkànnì Western Spring Television mo kí yín pé ẹ tún káàbọ̀ sórí àkọ́tún ètò lónìí ọ̀tún báyìí tọ́jọ́ ń yọ ọ̀tún tó òórùn ràn ọ̀tún tí labalábá tún máa ń yọ aṣọ tiẹ̀ òun náà láti yọ lórí ètò fún tòní ẹ má dẹ̀ gbàgbé pé ìpele nípele báyìí láṣọ áyán nípele làgbàdo ń tó mọ tiẹ̀ ṣẹ́rí lórí ètò yìí step by step la máa ń mú yín wẹ́rẹ́wẹ́rẹ́ la máa ń kọ́ yín lọ́nà tẹ́ fi máa kọ́ ẹ̀kọ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe lè sí oúnjẹ tuntun bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe lè sí àwọn ọbẹ̀ lóríṣiríṣi tó máa ṣara lóore pábánbárì ẹ̀ wá ni pé kò tún ní fàyín lápò ìyá kílẹ̀ tí wàá fẹ́ orí ètò tó yẹ kẹ́ wà náà la wà yìí Western Spring TV lélẹ́yìí ìkànnì àádọ́wàá channel 190 lórí Star Times bákan náà ẹ̀yin tó jẹ́ pé ìkànnì ìbánidọ́rẹ̀ẹ́ àbí YouTube lẹ́tí ń tẹ̀lé wa ìyẹn náà dáa kò burú kò bàjẹ́ ẹ̀yin gangan lẹ parí sí pẹ́lì yẹn lórúkọ Ọlọ́run ọba lórúkọ àwọn ikọ̀ ìyá tẹ̀yin náà tẹ̀tí ń retí wa kájọ máa kí ọ̀rọ̀ wa pé àtúkàbọ̀ sórí àkọ́tún ètò Aláṣẹ fún tòní Folúṣọ́ Olúwagbémiga. Ìyá ìjọ pèdèpèdè yìí ìyá aláṣẹ yín ló tún kí yín pé ẹ káàbọ̀ sórí ètò. Ṣé gbàgbé ọ̀rọ̀ tí mo máa ń tẹnu mọ́ fún yín pé ẹ jẹ́ kí oúnjẹ gidi, oúnjẹ tó ṣara lóore, oúnjẹ tó kún fún gbogbo àwọn èròjà dédé náà yẹn, ẹ jẹ́ kó jẹ́ ọ̀rẹ́ yín. Ẹ sọ oúnjẹ di oògùn, ẹ máa lò ó, ẹ máa jẹun dáadáa. Tẹ́ bá ti ń jẹun tó dáa, ẹ ní ṣàìsàn, ẹ ní ṣàárẹ̀, ara yín gan máa dán, inú tí gan á dùn, kò dìgbà tẹ́ bá lówó rẹpẹtẹ. Torí ẹ̀ lẹ fi ní ìyá aláṣẹ. Èmi máa ń mọ àwọn tó bá kọ́ yín ní àwọn oúnjẹ kéékèèké tẹ̀lé lówó díẹ̀ láti sè la máa mú wá fún yín sórí ètò. Torí náà ẹ tún farabalẹ̀ lórí ètò fún tòní. A tún máa dá bẹbẹ lára o, a tún máa kọ́ yín lóúnjẹ míì gẹ́gẹ́ bí ìṣe wa. Ẹ jẹ́ ká lọ kábọ̀ wá aláṣẹ lẹ́ ń wò lọ́wọ́. Ó dé àmọ́ kí yín pé ẹ tún káàbọ̀ padà. Western Spring Television náà la ṣe wà. Channel 190 lórí Star Times lórí ètò Aláṣẹ. Gẹ́gẹ́ bí ìṣe wa, èmi ò kí ń di ṣíbí mú lórí ètò yìí o. Ẹ ṣáà ń wò pé jọ̀wọ́ nìyá Aláṣẹ gangan máa dáná. Ẹ fọkàn balẹ̀, lọ́jọ́ kan mo máa kọ́ yín lóúnjẹ. Oúnjẹ tí bá dẹ̀ kọ́ yín yẹn, one in a million ni o. Ṣé mọ̀ pé ẹ̀kan lọ́dún ni kinní kan máa ń jáde ní, bẹ́ẹ̀ ni mo máa fi ṣe. Lórí ètò fún tòní, a ti ti yà lọ́dọ̀ Star Delight, ọlọ́wọ́ idán bí mo ṣe máa ń pè wọ́n. Torí pé nǹkan tó máa ń yà mí lẹ́nu nípa Aláṣẹ wa ni pé àwọn nǹkan míì tá ti mọ̀ tá fojúré náà, àwọn kan máa ń mú oríṣiríṣi mọ́ra wọn, gbogbo ẹ̀dẹ̀ máa jọra wọn. Lórí ètò fún tòní, wọ́n tún ti wà lórí ètò pẹ̀lú wa. Ó yá Star Delight, ẹ gbórí wọlé, ẹ gbé bọ́dì wọlé, ẹ káàbọ̀ sórí ètò fún tòní.
Ẹ ṣé o, yá jọ.
Ẹ kújọ́ mẹ́ta,
àṣẹ
ṣàlàfíà lẹ wà.
A dúpẹ́ o.
Èmi kan tiẹ̀ ti rí àwọn spoon, àwọn orógùn, àwọn plate, àwọn dédé náà ń kọ́.
Gbogbo wọn wà.
All right, a ti dé kitchen wa lónìí, ẹ káàbọ̀ sórí ètò. Ẹ kí àwọn ará lé, ẹ má fojú di wa.
Ẹ kú ọjọ́ mẹ́ta o, ṣé ẹ miss mi jù? Orúkọ tèmi ni Rukayat Bisola Ọlárinwájú, CEO Star Delight Restaurant.
Èmi mọ̀ pé wọn ò lè miss yín jù. Ṣé mo reason ni pé àwọn oúnjẹ tẹ́ kọ́ wọn yẹn gan, wọn ti ṣe gbogbo ẹ̀ tán. Definitely wọ́n sì máa rántí yín. Ok, lórí ètò fún tòní gẹ́gẹ́ bí ìṣe wa, ẹ tún ti tò àmọ́ tébù yìí kò fi bẹ́ẹ̀ kún púpọ̀ lénìí. Kí lẹ fẹ́ sè fún wọn lórí ètò
yìí? Iyán kókò.
Kókò kan náà.
Àsáró kókò.
Àsáró kókò.
Bẹ́ẹ̀ni.
Kí ni wọ́n pè lédè òyìnbó torí àwọn
cocoyam.
Cocoyam.
So òní àní paparazzi tó pọ̀.
Ṣùgbọ́n ṣàbàtúṣà torí dídùn iná ràn ó. Ok, àwọn nǹkan wo la wá nílò láti ṣe àsáró kókò wa?
Gẹ́gẹ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ ti mọ̀ lórí ètò pé èmi ò kí ń fi edé ṣeré.
Mo dá sí i mọ̀
bẹ́ẹ̀ ni a dẹ̀ ní àlùbọ́sà wa, a ní iṣu kókò wa tá a ti bù.
Kókò yìí ẹ bá mi ṣàlàyé torí oríṣiríṣi kókò ló wà, irú èwo la máa lò gan.
Kókò pupa lélẹ̀, tẹ bá kọ́kọ́ sè ẹ ní fi iyọ̀ sí tí ó fi rọ̀.
Tó fi máa rọ̀.
Bẹ́ẹ̀ ni a ní epo pupa.
Kí ló dé tẹ́ ẹ̀ mú òróró?
Òróró ò dáa fún àsáró. Bẹ́ẹ̀ ni o, Yorùbá ni wá ká lọ, tó bá dìgbà tá bá ṣe tàwọn olóyìnbó á ṣe. Àwọn tó bá ti jẹ́ tìbílẹ̀ ká lo nǹkan ìbílẹ̀, ká lò délẹ̀.
Ewé wo tún lè lè báyìí?
Úgú náà pelé.
Ẹ̀fọ́ úgú. Ṣé a lè lo ẹ̀fọ́ mi tábà?
A lè lo ẹ̀fọ́ mi, bọ̀ úgú náà ló ṣì dáa jù. Àdídùn wa náà dẹ̀ wà. A dẹ̀ ní rodo tòmátò tá a ti wẹ́. Kòkúnná àti wẹ́.
Ṣé ti rí o? Wọn ò lọ kókúnná torí mo ṣì ń wo kóró ń bẹ̀. Kí ló dé tẹ̀ fi lọ kúnná? Ṣá lè lo ata tó kúnná?
A lè lo ata tó kúnná bá ṣe wù yín ni. A dẹ̀ ní ẹja wa tá a ti dín alẹ́ran, a dẹ̀ lẹ́ja kíká náà òun láfi ṣaláàárù rẹ̀.
Ó dáa. Àwa fẹ́ ṣe àsáró kókò. Tọ́ lórí ètò Aláṣẹ, ẹ̀yin èèyàn mi láti ilé, ẹ kú àmójúbà, ẹ jẹ́ kú palẹ̀mọ́ torí mo pẹ́ tún máa kọ́ ẹ̀kọ́ jẹjẹ lórí ètò fún tòní. Àmọ́ ní báyìí ẹ jẹ́ kí èmi Aláṣẹ yìí ṣe gàyà náà. Ẹ mọ̀ pé mi kì í láì kí n máa pẹ́ nílé ìdáná. Ẹ jẹ́ kí n rọra kúrò kí n yọ̀ǹda Star Delight sílé ìdáná tán bá ti dáná tán. Ẹ máa wá wò wọ́n o, wọ́n bá ṣe ń dà sí nǹkan tán fi tẹ́lẹ̀ àti nǹkan tán bá fi parí ẹ̀. Ẹ̀yin ẹ jẹ́ kí n yọ̀ǹda yín. Ẹ lọ ṣe àsáró kókò wa. A máa pàdé lórí tábìlì. Ẹ jẹ́ kí èmi lọ gbé àlejò wa wá. A máa pàdé. Aláṣẹ lẹ ṣì ń wò Western Spring Television ni. Ẹ má kúrò ńbẹ̀, à ń bọ̀ wá.
Ní báyìí iṣu kókò wa ti wà lórí iná àti gbómi kaná àti dà sí, ó ti rọ̀ ní ìwọ̀nba tiẹ̀ mi kọ́kọ́ fi iyọ̀ sígbà tí mò ń bọ̀ àmọ́ ní báyìí tó ti rọ̀ sẹ́yìn náà rí àsìkò ti tó tá a fi epo pupa níwọ̀nba kò gbọ́dọ̀ pọ̀ jù kó má bàa mọ́ sun àti fi sí gẹ́gẹ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe mọ̀ àlùbọ́sà tán ti lọ̀ àti jíńjà èmi ò fi ń ṣeré rárá á dà sí ata wa tá a ti lọ̀ náà ní tòmátì àti rodo ẹ gbogbo mi ṣe ń ṣe mi tí ì fi yọ̀ sí o ní báyìí èdè wa náà a lọ sí i. lẹ́yìn náà a wá fi ìwọ̀nba magí díẹ̀ sí gẹ́gẹ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe mọ̀ mo sọ pé edé máa ń fún oúnjẹ ní àdídùn tiẹ̀ ó ní ò jẹ́ kémi lo àdídùn tó bá pọ̀ níbẹ̀bẹ̀. ó ṣe wà báyìí a wá dé a fi lára balẹ̀ dáadáa tó sọkùtù wọ̀wọ̀ ní ẹ̀gbẹ́ kejì á dín ata tá a fi ṣe aláàárù rẹ̀. ìwọ̀nba epo díẹ̀ gẹ́gẹ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe mọ̀ pé ètò ìmọ́tótó ó ṣe pàtàkì bá bá ṣe ń sè é ká sì máa nu àyíká wa. ká fi àlùbọ́sà sí i. á dẹ̀ da ata náà sí i. lẹ́yìn náà àwọn aláàrú tá a fẹ́ lò àwọn náà ló máa bá a ṣe ọ̀rẹ́ nínú ata náà. ó sì nílò iyọ̀ kékeré àti àdídùn díẹ̀ níwọ̀nba. ó ti ṣe rẹ́gí báyìí ó ti ṣe díẹ̀ tá a ti gbé Ìyàn iṣu kókò wa kaná. A yẹ̀ wò. Ó ti ń sọkùtù. Àsìkò tó láti gún. Nísìnyí tó ti wà lórí iná bí ìṣẹ́jú 10 a máa wá gún. Ẹ rí pé ó ti sọkùtù wọ̀wọ̀, ó sì ti rọ̀ dáadáa. A wá gún. Tí bá ṣe ń fọ dáadáa. Àwọn míì máa ń fẹ́ràn kí àsáró wọn kó sì níṣu títóbi nínú. Ẹlòmíì sì máa ń fẹ́ràn kó dàbí ìkọ́kọrẹ́. Àmọ́ àárín làwa ó ti bá wọn. Kò ní rọ̀, kò ní kúnná jù, kò dẹ̀ ní níṣu gbàǹgbà. Kò ní ní kókó gbàǹgbà nínú. Lẹ́yìn náà, ẹ rí pé ojú rẹ̀ ti ṣe rẹ́gí. A máa fi úgú wa, a ti ṣàn, a ti rẹ́. A máa fi úgú wa sí níwọ̀nba tí ó pọ̀ jù. Ẹ pé ojú rẹ̀ ti ṣe rẹ́mrẹ́m. Rárá yí náà lẹ̀ ń bẹ̀. A fa gbogbo etí pọ́ọ̀tù. Ẹ ti rí báyìí. Ẹ rí pé kò ṣàn jù. Ó dúró dáadáa. Ẹ rí pé kò ṣàn jù. Ó sì dúró dáadáa. Ó ní. Ó ṣe yẹ kí àsáró rírè. Ẹ rí. Ó ti délẹ̀ báyìí. Ká wá lọ sáàvù àwọn àlejò wa lókù.
Mo sọ fún yín lẹ́ẹ̀kan pé kẹ́ ẹ fojú sí o bí Star Delight wọ́n bá ṣe ń po gbogbo ẹ̀pọ̀ ìgbà tán bu epo sí ìgbà tán lo iyọ̀ ìgbà tán fẹja tán fata sí ó dá mi lójú pé ti rí gbogbo ẹ̀ lórí àsáró kókò èmi ò tiẹ̀ mọ̀ pé yàtọ̀ sí ká bọ kókò ká fi run epo jẹ mi mọ̀ kán tún lè fi dára ó yẹ wọlé ẹ wo wájú wa á ti wà nídìí tábìlì pẹ̀lú àlejò wa lórí ètò Alásè tẹ́yìn náà bá wò ẹni bó ṣe pọ́n abájọ tán fi sọ pé àwọn kan máa ń jí àsáró jẹ bí mo ṣe ń wò lójú yìí àti aroma ó ṣe ń ta sánsán ó ṣe kí ni ó fi hàn pé a máa bá nǹkan gidi bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣùgbọ́n èmi kọ́ ni màá sọ yẹn fún yín àlejò wa ni lórí ètò lónìí obìnrin làlejò wa o wọ́n fẹ́ wá yẹ iṣẹ́ obìnrin wò obìnrin tó fẹ́ ṣègbéléwọ̀n fún iṣẹ́ obìnrin Star Delight ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́ kú iṣẹ́
ẹ ṣe ma
ẹ kú gbìyànjú lè dáná báwo ló ṣe rí lára yín báyìí pé obìnrin ló fẹ́ yẹ̀ wò báyìí báyà yín ò máa já
tíntín
ó já tíntín kò sí wàhálà ẹ má jáyà àlejò wa wà lórí ètò lónìí business woman ni wọ́n olókoòwò ni
àlejò wa lórí ètò fún tòní. Ẹ káàbọ̀ sórí ètò Alásèmà. Ẹ ṣé gan ni. Ẹ bá mi kí àwọn aráalé pé ẹ̀yin náà bá wa darapọ̀ lórí ètò fún tòní.
Ẹ̀yin aráalé, ẹ kúrọ̀lẹ́ ma, ẹ kúrọ̀lẹ́ sà. Orúkọ mi ni Adébáyọ̀ Adéọlá, businesswoman ni mí.
Ẹ ṣé gan ni. Ẹ káàbọ̀ sórí ètò. Lórí ètò fún tòní, Star Delight ọlọ́wọ́ idán lèmi máa ń pè wọ́n. Wọ́n lo kókò tá a ti mọ̀ tẹ́lẹ̀, wọ́n wá dára sí. Ẹ bá mi gbójú ayọ̀ sílẹ̀. Kí lẹ̀ ń wò nú àwọn èyí ṣó tiẹ̀ báwo ló ṣe rí bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe kọ́kọ́ ń wò yìí.
Ojú ẹ̀ ogun rege.
Ogun rege.
Mo rí irú. Mo rí pọ̀nmọ́. Mo tún rí ẹja. Mo tún ká tún wà nínú ẹ̀.
Ẹ rálùbọ́sà.
Rálùbọ́sà o.
Ok, kò sí wàhálà. Nǹkan tẹ́ máa ṣe fún mi báyìí ni pé torí kẹ́ lè bá wa tọ̀ kí ṣe kẹ́ lè rí nìkan la fi pè yín wá sórí ètò. Kó má dàbí ojúṣàájú, kó má jẹ́ pé fúnra Star Delight lá máa ṣe lá máa jẹ́ ṣe mọ̀ pé tẹ́lòmíì bá jẹ́ ó máa mọ bó ṣe rí. Mo yọ̀ǹda yín ẹ bá mi ṣe kí ni ẹ já sẹ̀ríà fún nǹkan tó wà nú àwo. Ẹ yára lé lórí ètò Alásè. Ẹ má gbàgbé mo máa ń sọ fún yín gbogbo nǹkan tá à ń kọ yìí ẹ rí dájú pé ẹ ń gbìyànjú ẹ̀. Àwọn owó kéékèèké ló ń ta kókò àtàròjò ẹja ṣáwá ẹja kíká gbogbo àwọn nǹkan bẹ́ẹ̀ yẹn mo ti yọ̀ǹda yín o ẹ̀yin lè máa bá wa tọ̀ wò lọ kẹ́ ẹ fi mọ bó ṣe lọ gbogbo àwọn nǹkan tí ó wà nínú oúnjẹ ìkòpọ̀ ẹ̀yin náà bó ṣe rẹwà lójú ẹ láìkí nǹkan tẹ́ ẹ rí ni nínú ẹ lọ sọ́jà kẹ́ ẹ gbìyànjú ẹ wò kẹ́ ẹ tiẹ̀ ṣe é kẹ́ ẹ mọ bó ṣe máa rí nígbà tá à ń retí èsì ìdánwò Star Delight ṣàǹwojú wọn bẹ́ẹ̀ ló ń wẹnu wọn pé oníborí ìdè o kí ni màá gbà lórí ètò lónìí ó dáadáa ló wà nù àbìdí ẹ lọ máa fi èrò yín sí comment section bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe wò wá ní àwọn ìkànnì ìbánidọ́rẹ̀ẹ́ ó dùn ẹ tí jẹja ẹ jẹja sí bóyá ẹja yàn ní ọ̀sẹ̀ tí mọ̀ ní tẹ́tí sáré sọ pé ó dùn lóòótọ́ ẹ jẹ́ kí n bá yín bu omi torí pé oúnjẹ yẹn bí mo ṣe ń wojú ẹ̀ ata wà ń bẹ̀ èmi ò dẹ̀ ní fẹ́ kó lọ tí ò ká lejò mi àmì ọ̀gá ẹ̀ tẹ̀ ní kí n wá jẹ́ ń bẹ̀ oúnjẹ yẹn dùn gan ẹ fẹ́ dajẹ́
gbogbo ẹ̀ ló pé
ó pé sọ no problem àwọn àmọ̀ bóyá ó pé jẹ́lẹ̀ dáadáa nísìn ẹ ti fomi sìn ẹ ṣe gan ni mà ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́ inú mi dùn kóbìnrin lẹ́yìn náà ẹ̀yin lẹ́ni gbogbo ètò ń sáàbù yìí kò sí wàhálà àmọ́ inú mi dùn kóbìnrin lẹ́yìn náà ẹ ní ṣojú ṣáájú mo dẹ̀ mọ̀ pé ẹ nílò tí awo obìnrin lórí ètò fún tòní ó dà ìlúbìnrin la kó jẹ lórí ètò fún tòní ó yẹ kó máa rí bẹ̀ lẹ́ẹ̀kọ̀ọ̀kan àsáró kókò ni wọ́n sè fún yín ǹjẹ́ níbèrè lórí oúnjẹ tẹ̀
ṣé wọ́n fi vegetables mo ṣàwọn green yẹn látàárọ̀.
ẹ gbọ́.
bẹ́ẹ̀ ni ugu ni mo fi ṣe.
àjò ó look nice ní ẹnu mo taste tí inú mi dẹ̀ ń dùn.
inú yín dẹ̀ ń dùn pé oúnjẹ rèé Ọlọ́run ẹ̀yin ará ilé ṣe gbọ́. lẹ́yìn tẹ́ bá jẹ yìí ẹ tún máa package another one ìyẹn lẹ fi máa mọ̀ pé oúnjẹ yẹn débẹ̀ lóòótọ́.
irú yẹn náà irú gidi náà fi sí.
ok tá a bá wá ní pé gbogbo àpọ́nlé tẹ́ ti fún oúnjẹ yìí ìyẹn ò kan èmi eléyìí tó kàn èmi àtàwọn ará ilé ni pé máàkì gbọ̀ngàn ni Star Delight máa gbà láti 1 ó kan lórí 90 àádọ́rùn.
orí mi náà máa ń dáná tí ó kì í ṣàánú wọn mo fún wọn ní ṣé mi lè fún wọn ní 100.
rárá 90 nìgbélé wọn wá
fún wọn
90 over 90 ó dà wọ́n ní wọ́n fún yín ní àádọ́rùn nínú ìgbélé wọn máàkì ètò yìí and that will be the highest at least for now. àwùjọ tẹ ọ̀gá fún yín 99 lórí ètò yìí. ọjà mú yọ̀ǹda yín o ẹ̀yin lẹ́ni tó kù ẹ máa jẹ oúnjẹ yín ìṣó Star Delight ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́ kú ṣẹ́ ẹ̀yin ìdílé ni wọ́n ti fún yín 90 wọ́n ti sọ tó dúró re so ẹ̀yin ará lé ibi náà ni a ti máa ṣẹ́rí padà wálé lórí ètò Alásè fún tòní àsáró kókò ní Star Delight ṣe fún wa Star Delight ẹ já máa lọ lé ètò kù lè dáná èmi náà fẹ́ lọ tọ̀ wò nǹkan tó ń bọ̀wọ̀ tó dùn ẹ bá mi kí àwọn ará lé.
ẹ ṣé gan Western Spring Television mo dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín gbogbo ẹ̀yin tẹ̀dẹ̀ ń wò wá náà ẹ máa try recipe wa wò kẹ́ máa try ẹ̀ wò mo dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín o ìyá àjọ pèdèpèdè mo dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ yín ẹ̀yin producer ẹ̀yin behind the camera ẹ̀yin tẹ̀jẹ̀ náà àdúpẹ́ àwọn tó fún mi score àdúpẹ́ o ẹ ṣé gan ẹ ṣé púpọ̀.
àjọṣe wa ò ní bàjẹ́ ṣẹ́yìn náà rí bínú wa ṣe ń dùn ẹ rí pé téèyàn bá jẹ oúnjẹ gidi ó di dandan kí ló ń jẹ́ òṣònú tẹ bá ti róṣònú ẹ fún lóúnjẹ gidi ó máa yọ̀ mọ́ yín ó máa bá yín rẹ́rìn-ín lágbára Ọlọ́run ìgbà míì látún máa pàdé lórí ètò Alásè láti kàn ní Western Spring Television. Tá a bá dẹ̀ máa pàdé yẹn náà ẹ ti mọ̀ pé nǹkan tuntun látijọ́ máa kọ́ra wa. Ẹ má gbàgbé o, oúnjẹ gidi òun lọ̀rẹ́ àwọ̀ o, ẹ máa jẹ oúnjẹ tó dáa lásìkò. Folúṣọ́ Olúwagbémiga, ìyá ìjọ pèdèpèdè yín, ìyá Alásè ló sọ fún yín pé ó tún dìgbà kan náà o.